Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of Melyn Talks. Here we're going to talk about the laning phase, but last time we did support Zyra, this time we're going to be doing laning phase for mid Zyra, alright? So let's start with the basics, alright? What do I mean by laning phase? Covered this in the last video, going to be cross-referencing a few different things throughout this video, but what I mean by laning phase is just the time from the beginning of the game until the first tower in your lane falls. So here it's going to be until my mid lane turret dies or until their mid lane turret dies, because then the lane gets really long and people start moving around and basically everything kind of changes on how the game is being played for you as a mid laner. Alternatively, sometimes it's also in the bot tower dies, because then your bot lane's just going to come mid and you're like, wait, what are you doing here? And they're like, hey, I'm here now, taking all your CS. Let's try to siege this Anivia. And then you just kind of put your hand in your face. And sometimes that happens, but in general it's usually when your turret falls or when your opponent's turret falls, but it may also be relegated to the bot lane turret as well. All right, so we're going to divide this video up into a few sections. As always, it's going to be kind of long. As always, there are timestamps below, so check it out, watch the parts that you're curious about, and hopefully you learn a lot. We're going to begin with some preliminaries, all right? So items, runes, mastery, summoner spells, having a goal, skill order, skill usage, combo, everything. All right, we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. I'm going to be trying to talk a little more quickly today because these videos do get kind of long. You can use YouTube and actually make it go faster or slower as you deem appropriate. All right, and of course you can always pause and rewind as well. All right, so for items, runes, and masteries, okay, these are things that I've actually recently talked in great detail about. Check below the video description for where I talk about them, but they're in my previous Melyn Talks videos, okay? I did one on items for both mid and support, and one's on runes and masteries for both mid and support, even talking about Deathfire Touch and Thunderlord's Decree, some theory crafting about that. All right, so those three things we already talked about. Check out the previous videos. For summoner spells, there's a lot to talk about here because it's very important in the laning phase, and summoner spells are way more variable than summoner spells for Zyra in support or something. So mid, there's a whole bunch of things you can take. All right, but basically you should always have flash. I tried when I was making this video, when I was writing all my notes. I tried. Is there any situation where you wouldn't take flash? And the answer is no. Take flash always. Okay. And then, you know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can take: ignite, ghost, cleanse, exhaust, teleport, heal, barrier. I think that's probably it. But let's just go into when you would take each one. Most commonly, I run ignite. I most often run ignite or exhaust, but all the other ones are good. So you run ignite when you're in a sort of kill lane, okay? When you're in a lane where you're saying, okay, this champion's kind of weak early game, I'm gonna go for the kill. All right, or very rarely if there's like a Soraka or Dr. Mundo on the team, but usually you do it for the early game damage. All right, so I might do this, say, against like a Karthus or something, where I'm like, okay, I have the advantage of early game, I'm gonna go against them. Or maybe like a Twisted Fate, who also has a weak early game, something with an early game that you want to punish. Although depending on your play style and depending on what elo you're at, you could also just take ignite against any champion where you just really want to win the lane. All right. You can also take Ghost for team fighting and safety. So this helps you stay safe in lane. This helps you navigate through team fights to get access to the priority targets, dodge skill shots. It's a kind of an advanced summoner spell, and a lot of pros are using Ghost as a secondary summoner spell. It's really good. I haven't found too much success with it myself, but maybe that's due to practice. So check it out, try it out. Have Flash and Ghost, double mobility. Sometimes you only use Ghost instead of having to use Flash, and that's a lower cooldown on the Ghost, so it can be really nice, but it's mostly a safety and positioning spell for team fighting. You can also run Cleanse against a team with a lot of crowd control. Think maybe if you're against a Twisted Fate mid and they have like an Ashe 80 carry or something where there's so much CC on their team, and if you get hit by one of them, you're dead. All right. For example, the best example is like with an Ashe, right? If an arrow is coming out of any long range and you get stunned for 2 seconds, say bye-bye, you're dead. You can't do anything if you don't have Cleanse. But if you have Cleanse, you just pop it, run away. Great against Twisted Fate. Quite a few champions that Cleanse is really good against. But again, it's more of a team fighting spell. It's not going to help you in the laning phase, but it really is going to help you outside of the laning phase, usually. All right. And then next is Exhaust. Exhaust is fantastic. It's great against assassins, but it's kind of only good against predictable assassins. Think like Zed, right? Where most of the time he's going to be ulting you before he does a lot of his damage. You can drop the Exhaust right then and save a lot of things. Or maybe like a Talon or something where he's going to jump on you and he can't jump away. Unless he ults or something, but you'll have a pink word for that, something like Talon, like a Katarina. Again, once she jumps on you, that's it. Do or die. So, but not so much something like a LeBlanc or a Fizz, which is always really slippery. LeBlanc, for example, can jump on you, but then you pop your Exhaust and she's all right, goodbye. Have fun having no summoner spell, something like that. Or a Fizz, where a lot of the times with his pull and his ultimate, you may not even be able to get the Exhaust off when he's doing the damage. So I don't find Exhaust that great against Fizz either, although it can be situationally useful depending on how things play out. Two more things. Teleport is kind of falling out of favor right now for mid lane. I don't really like it myself, but it's great for farming and as well as roaming. So if you think I'm not going to do anything in this laning phase, I'm just going to take a siesta for about 10 or 15 minutes, just go to lane, farm, teleport to lane if you want, or if the enemy's overextending, you can teleport to back up your laners. It's a great summoner spell. I'm not the biggest fan of it right now, but it's really solid. All right. And then the last ones are Heal and Barrier, and I put them together because they're very similar. It's just a defensive spell that gives you extra life. Unfortunately, not an entire extra life, but it gives you more health, basically. And the difference between them is one's preemptive and one is reactive. For example, if Zed's going to ult me, I can use Barrier. Right? And then it's like, oh, I know he's going to do damage, so I know the barrier is going to get broken. Or you could even do it at the end of for the ult damage as well. Think also like Fizzle, as opposed to something that's reactive where you would heal after the fact. For example, you would heal maybe after a LeBlanc chains you, where you know the chain's going to hit you again, but you need a little bit more health or something like that. Heal is also nice because it gives you a movement speed boost, and it's also nice because it heals, say if you're having a 2v2 with your jungler, also in the mid and late game. Very, very useful to have the heal over the barrier. Barrier can just be a little nicer in the laning phase because Ignite doesn't reduce its healing. Okay, so if you have heal and your enemy has Ignite, it's going to be not as good unless you use it before the Ignite, but if you have Barrier, it's going to be good, no matter when. Heal usually scales a little bit better into the later parts of the game in general. Alright, tons of summoner spells. Try them out. They may take some getting used to. I know when I first started running Cleanse and Exhaust, I would have terrible Exhaust, terrible Cleanses. It took practice. Don't be afraid to get this practice. Even in ranked maybe, or especially in normal games, it's a great time to get practice. Or even honestly, like ARAMs or something like that. Practice with them, get to know them, get to know when to do each one, and a lot of it's down to personal preference. All right, but you have the information. So a few other things that you want to have an idea of before you actually start the game. This is the preliminary section. Is you want to have a goal. You want to have an idea of what do you want to do in this game, because that's going to impact how you play the lane. It's going to impact what items you buy. Having a goal is very important. For example, if I know that the enemy team has like a whole bunch of tanks, I'm going to know, okay, I'm going to need to farm up really good. I'm going to need to have a lot of CDR, a lot of penetration, stuff like that. If I'm up against like a Zac, a Shake, or an Evelyn, I think, okay, I can't push out against these guys. I got to play closer to my turret. I can't play as aggressively as I want. Oh, so maybe I shouldn't take Ignite here because I'm not going to be going aggressive that often. Stuff like that. Identify like how you think the game's going to play out and make your decisions in champion select based around that. So it's always very, very important to have an idea of how you think the game's going to play out. And of course, this can change. And it should change in general. For example, if you're against a Shaco and he's camping bottom lane, he's never ganked you once, well, you can probably play a little bit more aggressively. Although, again, don't just ask him. Don't blatantly ask the Shaco to gank you and stuff like that, all right? So, have a plan, but, just like life, all plans can be flexible. But, you want to have something, all right? As for skill order, this is very, very common. And most people just ask, hey, Melyn, do you max Q first? Do you max E first? Well, let me tell you, it is not that simple. And in this video, which is going to be super long, I already know it, we're going to talk about all the things you can do with your skill order, because it really depends on playstyle, depends on builds, depends on everything that's going on. It's a very, very in-depth question, okay? So first off, you should never get W first. All right, let's go everything. All right, let's talk early levels and then talk about actual maxing order, okay? So early levels, you should 99% of the time start Q. Only start E level 1 if you need it for an invader to defend against an invade, and even then it kind of sucks, but you know, do that. Never start W ever. Just, I don't even feel like I should comment on it, but I'm doing it I know there's some of you out there. All right, and then you can start E if you have to. It can be helpful if you're invading. It can be useful if you're defending an invade. But level 1 E is pretty useless and kind of only useful for having an extra spell later on and for summoning E plants for a while. Is the level 1 E. Level 2, usually I like to get W. I like to have reliable seeds, but level 1 W is a really long cooldown, so some people also prefer to get either E or Q, the other spell. So some people like to have QW, some people like to have QE at level 2. I'm not a big fan of QE because I don't like relying on my passive. Plants are a huge amount of the damage that you do, and if you rely on your passive, your trading and your pressure is going to be very, very inconsistent and kind of RNG focused. So, but at any rate, you should always have all 3 spells. In most of the situations, all 3 spells at level 3. QWE, very good. They're all important to your kit. You should have 2 seeds, etc., etc., etc. We'll talk more about that in the next part. I could see a case being made for mid lane to go QWQ in your first 3 levels, but I wouldn't really do it. I would only do that if you really wanted to harass a lot. But even then, QWE is probably still just as good. Okay, so those are some early skills. Now for maxing, this is when things get really exciting, okay? So, you know, you can go QWE, you can go EQW, you can go EWQ. Most of the times, so the idea is to figure out what your role is. What is your identity as Zyra? Zyra can be a lot of things, right? She can be a poke mage. She can be a burst mage. She can be a damage over time mage. She can be a supportive peeling mage, all this stuff. Figure out what you want to do, because your build, again, is going to be dependent on that as well. So once you figure out what you're going to do, you can figure out how you're going to level your skills. For example, let's go through a few. Say I want to go poke Zyra. I love Ludens. I love Liandry's. Let's put them together. Poke Zyra. Zyra of Doom. 1 auto attack is going to destroy your entire team, or 1 plant attack rather. So it's a fun build. So if you're rushing like Ludens and Liandry's, you're probably going to want to go QWE. Q is your main poke tool, again with the W, and leveling W gives you a lot more seeds. A lot more seeds means a lot more poke. And you're not going to be using your E very much because you're just poking, you're not all-inning, you're not peeling so much. Alright, so you can get the E last, and you can go QWE in that situation. And kind of the opposite situation is say you want to burst people down. You want to one-shot people. You want to go old Zyra, kill them and kill them all at the same time. So you might rush Protobelt and Liandry's. All right, some great burst items, or even like even Abyssal and Liandry's is good for burst if you're in close quarters. All right, in this case, you would go EQW. Radically different skill order, but you want to max your root first, so you can lock them up for as long as possible and get that burst damage in. You can guarantee the knockup with your ultimate once the root is high enough. Or almost guarantee, practically guarantee. And then you need to max Q second, because that's where a lot of the damage is coming from. You're not going to ever have seeds recharging during this burst, so W doesn't matter. You're going to get W last, all right? The last example, even though there are more orders, is say you were focusing on being a damage over time. Maybe you weren't having a great game, and you're saying, okay, I just need to help my team out. I'm just going to stay in the back, peel my team, do as much damage over time, take down their tanks, etc. Well, then you would go EWQ. Because you want the E for the peeling, you want the W for more seeds and damage over time, and then Q is maybe not as important, although it is also useful for damage over time, because the cooldown does get smaller on rank. So again, you could also go EQW. Tons of things. Find your role, figure out your play style, and then just make a decision based off of it. And that's basically it for skill order. Tons of Zyra mains do all sorts of different things, so don't be afraid to experiment and try things other than what you see me do. All right. All right, so the last section in this, last part in this preliminary section is I want to talk about skill usage and combos, okay? How to use your skills, like what you should be thinking about and stuff like that. So one of the biggest things that you should think about for any champion really is to never waste your spells, okay? And to this end, always hold on to your E longer than you think you need to. If you just throw it out, it's a 12-second cooldown. It's going to take a lot to come back. You might get punished for it, especially if you're maxing E. Really wait to use it. It's slow. It's easily dodged. You want to make it count, okay? Similarly, don't waste both seeds unless it's like the perfect situation. So situations where you would use both seeds are as if the enemy, your opponent is committing to something. If your opponent is has a shield that you want to burst, or if they can't trade back very, very well, then you could use both seeds. But in every other situation, you want to always keep at least one seed just in case they keep on fighting you. Because if they keep on fighting you, or maybe even think, oh, I'll fight you in 5 seconds, and you have no seeds, you're almost useless. Zyra is her damage is tied to her seeds, even more so since the rework, all right? So don't waste your E, don't waste your seeds. Try to keep one seed as often as possible. Similarly, don't ever do, I think there's never ever a good situation to do this. Don't ever give double E plants. 2 E plants, you know, the ones that slow, they're short range. The slows don't stack, and the range is really, really small. You usually lose out on so much damage if you have 2 E plants. And if you're doing a full combo, maybe like an EW QW combo, make sure you wait long enough on the second W. Otherwise, it will spawn 2 E plants on accident. So something to be aware of. Watch for it in your games. Don't use your second W too early. All right, and you can absolutely do the opposite. You can have 2 Q plants just fine, especially once you get your ultimate. 2 Q plants can be very good, again, especially if you have Leandries as well. They have great range. Usually you kind of want them spread out if you can, but 2 Q plants is not too bad, especially if you want to be bursting. All right, next up, we're going to be talking a little bit about combos. A very standard combo that I kind of alluded to earlier, once you're level 6, is maybe a QWEWR combo. So what this does is it starts off with basic harass, and they'll either run forward or run back. If they run back, you add harass. You're great. If they run forward and commit, well, then they're still in your plants, and you are started out well, and you can get them into a better position to land your EW combo. All right, and again, I say QW, not WQ, because you want to place the plant the latest possible moment to get it in the right spot, because it doesn't summon until the actual damage hits. All right. So that's why you're going to EW afterwards, and then you're going to lock them in place. You're going to slow them, you're going to root them, and then that preps you up for your ultimate. And the ultimate is what you're going to unleash at the end. You usually don't want to be too jumpy with your ultimate, especially if they can easily get out of it. If you have like a level 1 E, if they have a lot of mobility, save your ultimate until they're committed. The damage is good. The enraging on your plants is excellent. The knockup is good, but honestly, you're probably not going to get the knockup very often in lane. So that's a little bit about your ultimate and combos. I think I kind of already said this, but I'll say it again. Don't use your ultimate immediately after rooting them unless you have a high level E, or if they're otherwise CC, all right? Don't waste your ultimate, especially in the laning phase when you don't have a lot of stuff, and they usually have a lot of mobility, okay? Don't be too jumpy. I guess that's the kind of the summary for this section, is don't be too jumpy with your spells. Feel free to wait. Maybe even if it's only a second, sometimes waiting can really be helpful for aiming and landing your skill shots. All right. All right, so that's the end of that section. Next, we're going to be talking about things that go on during the laning phase. So like CSing, trading, warding, roaming, all these common questions or things that pop up, and when to do them, when not to do them, what they are, stuff like that, okay? So we're going to begin with CSing, probably the most important thing in the entire game for you to know how to do, especially if you're a mid laner, all right? I cannot stress enough how important CSing is. Me, myself, I'm a support main. I admit it. I just mid on the side because it's fun. I'm terrible at CS. You watch my stream, I'll be in Masters. I'll have like 60 CS at 10 minutes or something awful, all right? But it is so important. If you want to improve, if there's one single thing to improve on, it's CSing, okay? So go into a custom game. I don't care how silly it sounds. It helped me a lot. I still do it from time to time. Go into a custom game, just last hit, only with your auto attacks, and until you can get really comfortable with Zyra's auto attack animation, with how much damage she does and stuff like that, all right? Go in, practice, figure out how waves work, figure out how minion aggro works on the minions, figure out how the cannon minions can sometimes switch from one minion to another because of how Riot changed a few things a while back. All right, so just get familiar with how lanes work and how Zyra's auto attacks work until you are a master CSer. It is the best use of your time to improve, all right, if you're a mid laner. There's a whole lot of stuff, and I said in the custom game to just do it with your auto attacks. That was for practice. In actuality, don't be afraid to use your spells to get CS, especially if it's under the turret. The only exception to using your spells to get CS would be, you know, don't use all your spells and then the enemy LeBlanc's like, oh, I guess I'm gonna go kill you now, right? So you need, again, save your spells, you know, on at least some things, but don't be afraid to use one of them. If you're gonna miss a cannon minion, it's worth it. All right, stuff like that. Also, very closely related is experience with waves. Sometimes you'll get zoned out. You can't last hit without dying, so you have to stand back. Make sure you stand in experience range. And also, always be thinking of experience whenever you're backing and when your opponent's backing. That's why you always see people shove the lanes when their opponent backs. Say, all right, I'm going to put this to tower, because if it's dying to tower and nobody's nearby, that experience goes nowhere, and your enemy team doesn't have it. Levels and experience are a huge thing that I think a lot of people don't focus on very much, but it's something to always be aware of. You think, man, that guy doesn't have very many items. Why did he one-shot me like that? Or why did he beat me so well? Well, if he's 3 levels above you, that is a lot of stats, okay? So experience is huge. Or things like, oh, is a cannon wave coming? If a cannon wave is coming, it's going to be harder for your opponent or you to push in. And okay, well, maybe I'll just back here. I can't shove this fast enough. Stuff like that, all right? So always be aware of minions, CSing experience and stuff to make your decisions. The next thing to talk about is trading, all right? So when I say trading, I just mean, you know, you're attacking the enemy and they're attacking you back. You're trading health, basically. Sometimes it's not a trade. Sometimes it's a give. Got to be careful about those. But the idea for trading is most of your trading is just going to be QW, all right? Or even if you have a passive seed, maybe just a Q. All right, it's pretty short range, unfortunately, and because they changed it from being a circle to being a thin rectangle like this, it actually makes it easier to hit laterally, but much harder to hit vertically, front and back. So it's a little harder to do that. Also, whenever possible, drop an auto attack on them, because even if they dodge your Q, if you auto attack them, it'll make your plants focus on them and hone in on them. And again, plants are most of your damage. And one of the most useful things when you do want to harass is be aware of what the health is of your minions, not your enemy's minions, but your minions, because they're going to always want to walk in and auto attack, especially early game. They're mostly going to be auto attacking. Later in the laning phase, they're going to be doing a lot of spells to clear the minion wave, but especially early, they're going to be auto attacking to kill the minion, especially for cannon minions. That's when you want to pounce, all right? Say, okay, I know you're going to walk forward and get this minion. You know, you can't fool me. And then do the QW, or if it's a cannon minion, you think they're predictable, go ahead and EW, and you can follow up with a Q afterwards. Stuff like that is always very useful to be aware of, using your own minions to get your trading off, all right? And again, it's very common to QW, and if they commit, you can EW afterwards, and that's a good situation to use both of your seeds. Stuff like that, all right? And another thing to be thinking about when you're trading is what is my opponent going to do? For example, if I'm up against a LeBlanc or a Fizz and I toss a QW combo on them, most of the time they're just gonna jump out of it and be like, haha, see ya, and they'll just kind of laugh at your silly champion that takes forever to do damage. And you need to keep that in mind when you're doing these things. For example, if a LeBlanc's going to jump on you when you Q, have an EW combo ready for when she jumps at you. If a Fizz is going to jump on his pull at you and land on you, again, keep an EW ready. Because if you root him when he's relatively immobile, although he still has his Q, that he can dash to an enemy minion away from you, stuff like that. All right, so always be aware and think, okay, if I Q this guy, what is he going to do? And finally, for trading, you should all definitely know when not to trade. Okay, sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I'm harassing him down so much. This is great. I'm making them use all your potions, and then I realize, wait, I'm missing all this CS because I'm focusing on harassing. I'm down 10 CS or something like that. Never harass if it's going to cost you CS. If you can get perfect CS while harassing, that's great. Keep doing that. Kudos to you. But if you can't, think, okay, is this harassing going to accomplish anything, or is it just going to distract me and make me lose CS? Also, if you're worried about getting ganked, you might not want to start a trade, because if you start a trade, you're kind of locked into a certain position. You're not going to have all your spells, and then a gank is going to be much more effective and damaging to you. And finally, don't trade. And this is kind of obvious if you think about other applications. Don't trade if you're significantly lower on health, right? Because if they're full health and I'm half health, I don't want to trade any of that. I want to keep whatever half health I have, because going from 50% to 25% is a lot worse for me than it is for them to go from 100 to 75, So those are some times when not to trade. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You get a feel for it, you have experience, and that's basically what trading is and when to do it. All right. Next topic up, you may not think this is a topic, but if you don't think so, it is. It's very important. Warding. Okay, warding is important in League of Legends. Warding wins games, warding loses games. Warding is super, super important. Okay, so mid lane, unfortunately, you have so many places to ward. You have to worry about top lane roams, you have to worry about bot lane roams, you have to worry about jungle ganks, you have to worry about maybe their mid laners waiting for you in ambush. It's so hard to get vision in the mid lane. Let's just start with top and bottom. All right. For top and bottom, a lot of times you'll have pinks in the rivers, or you can get wards in the rivers, but most of the time you want to be always checking your map. Constantly check your mini map. All right, are they there? Are they not? Oh, did they recently back? Oh, could they be coming? Where would they be coming from? Stuff like that. Just constantly, never go into autopilot. Constantly ask yourself these questions. And don't be afraid to ask your teammates. Be like, oh, did bot back? Or, oh, is bot coming? Stuff like that. Be communicative. Very useful. And for junglers, especially like these nastier junglers with like Zac or Shaco or Evelyn, who it's really hard to traditionally ward for them, getting wards near to their jungle, like maybe near their Wraith camp or maybe near the brush near their wolves, is very, very effective. Not only to you, but to your entire team. If you know where they're farming, you can think, oh, they're at Raze. Okay, they could easily come to me in about 15 seconds. So, get my last harass out, and then I have to play safe for a bit and see where they're going after that and stuff like that. So jungle camp wards, especially jungle camp pink wards, if it's in like a place that most junglers don't path through, can be really, really useful. River wards are also very good. I don't actually ward my river brush that often, unless I'm like, okay, I have an advantage in lane. I'm gonna pink next to my lane because I know I can defend it. It's gonna give my jungler an easier avenue to gank, stuff like that. A lot of the times I prefer wards near their jungle camps and in the river, but warding is great. Do it. I wasn't using my outline list. I want to make sure I talked about everything I wanted to for warding. Yeah, oh yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you ward, don't ward everywhere. You can't get vision everywhere. Try to get vision on like one side of the lane. So I'm going to get vision above my lane, I'm going to get vision below my lane, something like that. And when you get vision on that side, always be in that part of the lane. Because okay, if they're coming from this side, I'll have warning. But if they're coming from the other side, you won't have warning until they get into the lane, in which case you're the farthest part from that part of the lane. So, when you get vision, cheat to that side. And that's basically warding. Next is another common topic, and it actually varies quite differently from when I was talking about support Zyra, and that is roaming, okay? Roaming as a mid laner is imperative, basically. At some point in the game, you're going to want to do some roaming, because as a mid laner, you have the most impact on the other lanes, maybe outside of the jungler. But you can easily, like, if you're bot lane, it takes a lot of time to go top, and vice versa, unless you have teleport and stuff like that. But as a mid laner, easy to go top, easy to go bot, easy to invade the enemy jungler, a whole bunch of stuff, okay? But you don't want to roam haphazardly, because roaming takes a lot of time. And if you roam when the wave is near your turret, the enemy laner is just going to shove it under your turret, and you're going to lose all that golden experience. So you want to always make sure you shove before you roam. Or alternatively, if you know the enemy laner has backed, then you can leave when the lane's in a normal position and not miss anything, or not miss much as well. So always be aware of the lane position and your opponent's position when you're going to ward. Roam, rather. Although I guess warding too. All right. Also, if you're losing really hard, that can be a great time to roam as well. And kind of the exception to the rule of missing CS is if you know you're going to get dove, you can just maybe just peace out and not die. But I talked more about that in a later section. Okay. When you actually get to the lane, combos are very important. I don't think you would almost ever start E when you're roaming. It's very, very easy for them to dodge, especially if it's max range. More common starts are Q and surprisingly ultimate, okay? Because here's two situations where I talk about when both of those would be good to lead with, right? Say I'm roaming up to top lane, and no, I think bot lane's a better example for this one. Say I'm roaming down to bot lane, and you know, my bot lane's following up, but you know they're not too close, so I'm just gonna QW. A lot of people will dodge the Q, and if they don't, it's free damage. You're great. And then afterwards, you can either ultimate or use your E. But if you just E initially and they dodge it, well, you're kind of out of CC. But you can also lead with your ultimate, especially for bottom lane. Say you're walking up bottom lane, you can just pop your ultimate way ahead of them. I mean, not like a lot ahead of them, but significantly ahead of them, that they obviously can't walk through the whole thing. Because if you do that, you basically say, you shall not pass. You can't go any further. You're stuck here with us. And then you have a 2v3. You may sort of waste your ultimate, but it guarantees their position. It's a zoning ultimate, okay? And if you do that, again, make sure that you still use your maybe like a QWW, or just at least a QW immediately after, so you still have those enraged plants that are in front of them, blocking their way of escape. Again, this is something that you only do when you have a significant advantage. If their bot lane's fed, or if any of you are low health, you can't use your ultimate like this. All right, but again, don't waste your E when you roam. That's some stuff. Also, ask for what wards they have. A lot of times your laners know when they trinketed, when they pinked, stuff like that, and it's very unlikely that you're going to be paying attention to that while you're laning mid. So if you want to roam, say wards bot, wards top, and usually they'll let you know. Sometimes they'll be wrong, but you know, a lot of times it can be helpful. So just communicate, ask for that. Also, let your lane engage if possible. It's a lot harder for, say, like this situation is much worse when, you know, you show up and they're like, oh, there's somebody ganking me. See ya, I'm out. Rather than, oh, I'm fighting like normal. Wait, what the heck? Why is there Zyra on me? Something like that. So once they're already fighting is usually the best time we can go in. That doesn't always happen though. Sometimes people get spooked. Sometimes, you know, you have Leonas miss every single spell that they have. They even Q a minion, so they miss the Q too. So, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out very well. But usually you want to let the laner go first. All right, and finally for roaming, play around your jungler. Three is great. 4 is better if you're going bot lane. A lot of times, it's so important for every role actually to play around your jungler. If your jungler's going somewhere, saying, "Hey, can I come too?" And usually you can, especially because if say the enemy jungler's like, oh, this is gonna get ganked, I'm gonna get this sweet counter gank, and it's like, well, no, it's not a sweet counter gank because there's the mid laner too. All right, so playing around your jungler is really good, especially when you're invading. If you see your jungler invading, it's really helpful to shove up and back them up, because then you force the enemy mid laner into a catch-22. Do they follow you and lose CS, or do they get to CS and maybe their jungler loses a lot? All right, stuff like that. Which brings us more into the jungle with taking jungle camps. So we've all been there, you know. We've all had those laners when we're jungling, and we've all been those laners when we're laning. We just take the wolves, they take the rays, they're like, sorry dude, thanks for all the CS. It's, more prominent with maybe some other champions, but Zyra's actually really good at doing it too, because you usually just one shot the small like rays or the small wolves with your QE combo, and then you have your plant tank the rest. You can do it all from over the wall, so it's very easy to take jungle camps. Unfortunately, you only want to do this at the right time. Sometimes this can really damage your jungler. So do it if they're busy ganking. You can do it if they're counter jungling a lot. You can do it if they don't need the camp. But if they're mostly just farming, especially if they're like a level 6 jungler, don't do it. It's not worth it. The extra CS in your pocket is not really worth the experience that it denies them. So be careful and be polite. Be nice about it. You can sometimes ask for permission, or if they ping you back and say, hey, don't farm my camps, don't be rude. Don't be like, what are you going to do with that, or something like that. Just be nice and say, okay, it's their jungle. They should be able to make the decision. In general. There are exceptions to every rule. So a few more things. Again, this is the biggest section of this video, is what I want to talk about: what you should do when you're winning and what you should do when you're losing. Oh my gosh, every video is, I just looked at the time, every video is going to get longer. What to do when you're winning, what to do when you're losing. Okay, here we go. When you're winning, the biggest question you have to answer is, hey, do I want to push the lane or do I want to freeze the lane? Pushing the lane lets you take tower easily. It lets you roam easily. Freezing the lane lets you get kills. Freezing the lane lets you get ganks. Freezing the lane lets you deny experience and stuff like that. But of course, ganking, you know, it's hard to gank when they're under the turret unless they're low and you can dive them, and it's easy to get ganked, you know, and vice versa with if you freeze. All right, so just kind of figure out, you know, like what's going on. Should I freeze? Should I push? Especially if they're roaming a lot, you're gonna want to be pushing. You're not just going to be freezing the lane, and then meanwhile your bot lane is dying and they're like question mark, stuff like that. Okay, so be aware of it when you're winning. And a lot of times you shouldn't, I don't think you should really roam a lot when you're winning. When you're winning, you want to make use of that advantage. Any point in League of Legends, make use of your advantage and cover your weaknesses, okay? So if you're winning, if you're better, if you're stronger than your opponent, and you leave that opponent, then it kind of just lets them get back into the game unless you have a really, really good roam that you can do, okay? But you can still counter, you can still invade with your jungler and stuff. That can be great to do on ahead. But usually, you want to be very careful about that. And also kind of conversely, and this is in the next spot as well, is don't let your opponent roam. We've all been there. We're like, we're 5-0. Our enemy LeBlanc is 0-4 or something like that. She can't touch us. She uses distortion. She's dead. Stuff like that. She can't do anything. Meanwhile, you're just freezing the lane. You're having a good old time. Your bot lane's pushed up the turret, and then you hear enemy double kill, and it's like, oh, this LeBlanc is going to be a monster. Meanwhile, they're like question mark, and you're like, oh my gosh, this lane has been ruined. All right, don't let your, that was a long story. Don't let your opponent roam for free. Ask your jungler, say, hey, come, let's take this turret. Or be like, oh, sorry guys, or ping it out, spam the pings. Do not let your opponent get back into the game, and do not let your opponent get others back in the game when you are winning. All right, once you're winning, you should have them in your grip. Okay. All right, that's basically it for when you're winning. When you're losing, usually you want to farm under turret. Be like, okay, this is terrible. I gotta farm under turret. I gotta be safe. I gotta not give away any more than I have already have. And whether that means, and a lot of times that's gonna mean giving up CS. All right, saying, okay, I can't get the CS without dying, or I can't. You know, I can't trade with them without dying. It's okay. Try to stay within experience range if you can, but it's okay to back off when you're losing. Know when you're losing and know what you can do to fix it, or if nothing, know what you can do to mitigate it as best as possible. And sometimes, even if you're farming under turret, your opponent can dive you, or maybe you know the jungler is going to come. If that's the case, try to let your jungler know. But I mean, don't tell them if you don't think so. But try to communicate with your jungler, because a lot of times that can be an easy double kill if you're getting dove like that and your jungler is aware of it. Or warding kind of nearby your turret so you can get a little bit of a heads up if the enemy jungler comes, can be really useful. Or sometimes if you're really far behind, just say, Bye, guys. I'm out. I can't farm under turret. I'm sorry, guys. And make something happen elsewhere on the map, preferably elsewhere that's winning. Okay, so if your top lane's winning, say, hey, I'm gonna piggyback on this guy. He's good, he knows what he's doing, I'm gonna help him out. I say, I can't go mid, I'm gonna gank this top laner, I'm gonna help him take turret. Stuff like that can be really good if you're really losing lane. Roaming and helping others is the best way to not only help your team when you're losing, but help yourself when you're losing as well. Okay. So roam, call if you're getting dove, farm under turret. It's okay to lose some CS. Try to get experience if possible when you're losing. Final thing I want to talk about in the laning phase, really short note on matchups. As you can see down there on the video, it says Zyra matchup VODs. Okay, I try to keep an organized spreadsheet of all the different Zyra matchups for mid, top, support. Recently started doing jungle. So if you have questions about a specific matchup, you can see it in action. Matchups will affect your runes, your masteries, your skill order, your item builds. Matchups affect everything basically. Okay, so it's very important. Also, you can check out my text guide. I have a matchup section that that doesn't get updated as often as the rest of my guide, but it should be more or less updated and just give like quick tips for all the different champions that you could expect to see. Okay, and that's kind of all I'm going to say about matchups, because honestly, if I talked about every single champion you're going to see in the mid lane, we would be here forever, and we're already going to be here a pretty long time. Okay, so we're going to end with the last section, a level by level walkthrough of what kind of to expect. This is mostly level 1, 2, 3, and 6, okay? So level 1, you know, you're coming to lane, you got Q probably, and hopefully you spawned up your passive seeds before you got into lane. Having as many passive seeds as possible is nice. A lot of times your lane opponent will step on them, but it's still good. Usually you want to get the level 2 first, but you don't want to get the lane in a bad position. If the lane is really close to their turret and you can't shove it in all the way to the turret, you're going to get ganked very easily, and you can't really use your plants to harass them. So usually you want the lane either right in front of your turret, in the middle, or under their turret is kind of where you want to keep it. So you're going to be auto attacking. You might be trading with your Q. If you can get Thunderlord's Decree to proc, that's going to really help your level 1. But most of it really depends on your passive and what the enemy is doing. So if you have any passive plants, try to position yourself. Remember, your Q is like this, and it goes around you. Try to position yourself so that you can Q over the passive seed and the enemy lane opponent, okay? So all level 1 is going for a quick level 2 and using your passive seeds to get as best harass as possible. But again, don't be afraid to use your Q without passive seeds as well. Auto Q auto still procs Thunderlord. It's a really good level 1 strategy. Once you're level 2, don't get too excited. Don't waste your W. I think level 1 W has like a 15-second or some really long cooldown. So, you know, once you use that seed, you're effectively level 1 again with regard to your skills. So don't be afraid to hold on to it a little bit, but go ahead and harass. Start harassing. QW is your main harass. Start doing it level 2 if you think it fits. And again, focus on the lane position. Where are you keeping the lane? I did a different video a while back on lane position and all this stuff that talks about where you want the lane and how to not use your plants to shove the lane, because you know your skills are all going to automatically shove the lane as well. And it's something you want to always be aware of, all right? And so your level 2 is mostly just going to be QW autoing them, getting some more trades in. And then level 3 is really where it gets quite interesting for Zyra. It's when you have access to all your spells in almost every situation. And then again, this is where you're going to start QW autoing them for harass. And if they commit, if they go to a longer trade, you EW them, and you can get a lot of damage off with this. And after like one of those, if they go immediately again when you have 2 seeds, that can be a time where you can go for an all-in and get the kill. Stuff like that. Once you're level 6, things get a lot more dynamic, because now you have your ultimate to add to your kit. I already talked about using your plants, using your skills, and using your ultimate in the right way. So I won't rehash that, but again, just some basic things is don't waste your ultimate. It's a really long cooldown, especially if you don't have much CDR, and it's very, very strong, okay? So don't be afraid to hold on to it for a little bit until you know your enemy's committing. And that's kind of it. This section is kind of short because I think I talked about most of the stuff I would normally keep in this section earlier on in the video. All right, so keeping up with my habit of making every single Melyn Talks video longer than the last one. Hope you enjoyed. whole bunch of resources below the video. There's guides, there's my highlight videos, there's my stream, my Twitter, all this stuff, my text guide, all my video guides, Zyra spreadsheet, whole bunch of stuff below the video. Check it out. Also, feedback, really important. For example, this is the first video I'm trying to have maybe no background music. Sometimes that can be distracting. You say, hey, Melyn, I like having no background music. This is a lot more easy to concentrate. Or Melyn, it's so boring. You're so boring. Why can't we have some music to listen to? All right, let me know. Comments are great. Or any other feedback you have. Oh, this would be a great topic for a Melyn Talks episode, or any kind of feedback. Your hair looks funny, stuff like that. Or for example, my webcam looks really washed out and white today. Tell me your feedback in the comments. Tell me your feedback on my stream. Tell me your feedback on my Twitter. Communication's really important because I make these videos for you. It's to help you guys. So let me know how I can best help you. All right. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching, and may your enemies feel I can't say this with a straight face anymore. May your enemies feel the thorns embrace.